Cambodia's former Prime Minister Hun Sen. Recent actions have once again proved the old adage that the world is one giant makeshift operation. For a national leader to publicize high-level private conversations in order to attack another family he has been close with for decades is something even a cunning political strategist like Sima Yi, who would swear on a falling feather, would question as being a bit too much. But the 73-year-old Hun Sen did just that. Why would Hun Sen, who has dominated Cambodia for nearly half a century, make such a bizarre move? Senility is not a label that fits Hun Sen. All the chaos in Southeast Asia has its roots in family interests and personal gain. If Hun Sen ever regrets his current choice, it will be because he realizes that as a small nation politician, he shouldn't so rashly offend the leader of any country more powerful than Cambodia. The primary reason Hun Sen failed to recognize this is that his continuous victories within Cambodia seem to have made him forget his true origins and status. Some see Hun Sen as a rough-and-tumble hero, while others view him as a despicable villain. But what is undeniable is that his path to the pinnacle of Cambodian power is the ultimate blueprint for a small-timer's rise through shrewd alignment and struggle. Born into a Cambodian peasant family, the young Hun Sen dropped out of school to join the fight against the Lon Nol regime at the behest of Prince Sihanouk after the Cambodian Civil War broke out in the 1970s. The organization he joined was the Khmer Rouge. In his early days, Hun Sen was a fierce and sharp-witted fighter. He lost his left eye during the battle to capture Phnom Penh, but in return for his military achievements was successfully promoted from a soldier to a mid-level commander within the Khmer Rouge. Although his position was not high at the time, the young Hun Sen had a promising future within the regime. However, after the Khmer Rouge began large-scale internal purges, Hun Sen had a premonition that a regime so devoid of loyalty and compassion could not last. He made what was arguably the first and most critical choice of his life. He defected to Vietnam. From a nationalistic standpoint, this was a choice no Cambodian should have made. For Cambodia, Vietnam was not only a historical enemy that had seized their Mekong Delta lowlands, but also the primary threat preparing to annex Cambodia under the banner of Indochina. But Hun Sen's defection was based purely on a cold political calculation. He predicted that the Vietnamese government would eventually use the Khmer Rouge's persecution of ethnic Vietnamese as a pretext to invade Cambodia. When that day came, Vietnam would need a group of Cambodians who understood the country, opposed the Khmer Rouge, and were willing to cooperate with Vietnam to form a new government. Even if this new government was a Vietnamese puppet, military officers who had defected from the Khmer Rouge, such as Hun Sen, would be the ideal candidates. Events unfolded just as Hun Sen had predicted. In early 1979, the Vietnamese army captured Phnom Penh and overthrew the Khmer Rouge. With Vietnam's support, Hun Sen and a few other Cambodian defectors established the People's Republic of Kampuchea. At just 27, Hun Sen was appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs, becoming the youngest and most active core figure in the new regime.
Hun Sen's successful gamble allowed him to use Vietnam's power to instantly become Cambodia's most promising new political star. He was well aware of who had helped him get to this position. After becoming foreign minister, he deferred to Vietnam's every move. In return for his loyalty, Vietnam supported Hun Sen, and at the age of 33, he was appointed Prime Minister of Cambodia for the first time in 1985. However, as we know today, Vietnam would completely withdraw its troops from Cambodia less than 10 years later. Why didn't Hun Sen, unlike so many other puppets, fall when his backer did? There were two reasons. First, Vietnam's decade in Cambodia was not simply a period of military occupation and exploitation. After completely dismantling the Khmer Rouge, the Vietnamese, with Hun Sen at the core, built a complete state apparatus from the ground up. After establishing military control over Cambodia, Vietnam first created a nationwide bureaucratic network, from the central government down to the local level, all controlled by members of the Cambodian People's Party, CPP. Next, they helped Hun Sen build and train a government army and police force loyal to the CPP. Because the Khmer Rouge's rule had eliminated Cambodia's entire past upper and middle class, these new social organizations created by Vietnam not only permeated every corner of Cambodia, but also formed a stable and cohesive new group of powerful people. It's safe to say that Hun Sen and the CPP were a product of Vietnam. But Hun Sen's brilliance lay in the fact that his loyalty always shifted with his own interests. The Khmer Rouge offered him an opportunity, so he was willing to lose an eye fighting for them. But when the Khmer Rouge showed signs of failure, he had no qualms about betraying them. A person like this would naturally not have any genuine loyalty to Vietnam either. In fact, by 1985, the year Vietnam helped him become prime minister, he had already realized that Vietnam's military occupation of Cambodia would not last forever. So when the Vietnamese leader, Le Duc, who was a strong advocate for the invasion, passed away, Hun Sen, sensing a shift, began making his own moves. At this crucial moment, Hun Sen once again demonstrated an astonishing political intuition. He actively pushed for reconciliation with Prince Sihanouk. This requires an explanation of the situation in Cambodia after the Vietnamese invasion. At the time, the legitimate Cambodian government with a seat at the United Nations was the coalition government of Democratic Kampuchea, led by Prince Norodom Sihanouk. However, in his struggle against Vietnam, Prince Sihanouk faced a very difficult reality. In the 1980s, there were three factions in Cambodia: Hun Sen's group, Prince Sihanouk's group, and the remnants of the Khmer Rouge who had retreated to the Thai border. From a political standpoint, Prince Sihanouk should have allied with the Khmer Rouge to expel Hun Sen, the puppet leaders supported by the Vietnamese. But emotionally, the Khmer Rouge were the murderers of several of his family members. Therefore, even while cooperating with the Khmer Rouge, Sihanouk was always looking for a political solution that could bypass them.
Hun Sen sensed Prince Sihanouk's deep-seated need. Beginning in 1987, the two held multiple secret meetings in a small French town. They eventually reached an agreement. Hun Sen's CPP would support the restoration of a constitutional monarchy in Cambodia, and Prince Sihanouk would return to the throne as King of Cambodia. In return, Hun Sen could use the priceless political asset of the royal family to clear his name as a Vietnamese puppet and provide a deep foundation of legitimacy for the CPP's rule. The deeper reason Hun Sen was able to achieve this goal was not only his perfectly accurate political foresight, but also the fact that his personal destiny was intertwined with the destiny of the CPP. The CPP and its controlled military forces were Hun Sen's ace in the hole in his domestic power struggles. His shared fate with the high-level leadership of the CPP is the fundamental reason he can still wield absolute influence in Cambodia today. Not all Cambodians have respect for Hun Sen, the invisible king. In 1997, Prince Sihanouk's second son, Prince Ranarid, attempted to use military force to challenge Hun Sen, but his private guard was no match for the army, which was deeply controlled by the CPP. In 1998, Hun Sen pushed for a constitutional amendment to abolish the short-lived dual premiership, officially becoming Cambodia's sole prime minister. The abolition of the dual premiership was seen as a clear signal of Hun Sen's autocratic rule. However, at the same time, Khmer Rouge leader Pol Pot suddenly passed away, and other high-ranking Khmer Rouge leaders chose to surrender. This event not only diverted the attention of Cambodians, but also allowed Hun Sen to seize the opportunity to portray himself as the peacemaker who ended Cambodia's 30-year civil war. Military victory combined with the eradication of separatism and the tacit approval of the royal family thoroughly consolidated Hun Sen's position. He didn't relax even as he got older. After 2000, Hun Sen never missed a chance to suppress political opponents. Even when the CPP essentially had no rivals, Hun Sen never let go of a potential threat. For example, in 2017, Hun Sen used the Supreme Court, which he controlled, to forcibly dissolve the Cambodian National Rescue Party and banned its 118 high-ranking leaders from participating in politics.
Domestically, the CPP holds an absolute advantage, even once holding all 125 National Assembly seats in 2018. Therefore, as Hun Sen aged and had to consider a successor, passing the torch to his son became an increasingly obvious choice. On July 26, 2023, Hun Sen announced that his eldest son, Hun Sen, would be the next prime minister. On the surface, the succession of power to his son seems like the inevitable result of Hun Sen's absolute control over Cambodia. But Hun Sen's rise is a smokescreen for a much larger handover of power to the next generation. At the same time Hun Sen became a candidate for prime minister, several key positions in the Cambodian government, including ministers in the Interior, Defense, Justice, Commerce, and Land Management ministries, were also handed down from father to son. Looking back at Hun Sen's 50-year political career, this extreme protection of his inner circle and his intense vigilance against risk are his core strengths for maintaining long-term power. Beyond these 2 points, all loyalty and ethical obligations must give way to political goals. However, Hun Sen may have overlooked one key fact. His logic of might makes right and loyalty is optional works because Cambodia is a small country among small countries. If he applies this same logic when dealing with countries more powerful than Cambodia, it could have disastrous consequences for him.